Heading into week 9 of the fantasy football season right now, and we are dealing with lots of bye weeks, lots of injuries at the running back position. No Travis Etienne this week, no McCaffrey, no Jahmyr Gibbs, no Montgomery. There's lots of tough decisions that I had to make on these top 30 running back rankings today, and I'm definitely going to be ruffling some feathers today, so I'm expecting that. So today we're getting into the top 30 running back rankings video for week 9 fantasy football, and at the end of this video, I will be providing you my favorite underdog flex option of the week at the running back position, which again, was really tough. So please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So let's go ahead, get right into it. Number 1 is already probably going to shock you. I've got Alvin Kamara this week versus the Chicago Bears. You can see the numbers on the screen of what he has done. It's been tremendous. He's averaging almost 19 fantasy points per game in a half PPR format, and the volume is totally there. He's seeing so much volume, it's absolutely outrageous what he's doing. And he's getting a good matchup this week against the Chicago Bears, who are absolutely just reeling. And they gave up some big plays to Austin Eckler last week, and basically, Austin Eckler's got the same skill set as Alvin Kamara does. So I love this matchup for Alvin Kamara this week. He's been too involved. I think they're going to lean on him hard this week. And at number 2, I've got Austin Eckler this week taking on the Jets. Now, I was tempted to put Eckler here, obviously, just because it felt right at number 1. I didn't end up doing it because of the matchup difference. The Jets are tough. They're a tough team. So I don't exactly love what's been happening with the Los Angeles Chargers offense either. Austin Eckler has really not looked too great carrying the ball of late. It hasn't looked too great. He's averaging less than 4 yards of carry, but he was very involved last week as a receiver, and that was the important piece that was missing. And really, we can expect that moving forward without any Mike Evans involved, without any Mike Williams involved, rather. So I expect him to continue to be good, but I did have to make a tough decision here at the number 1 spot, obviously. Number 3 and 4, Isaiah Pacheco and Raheem Mostert, same exact matchup, and they literally have basically the same workload. Week to week, it's very similar. I put more trust in Pacheco, though, because I know for a fact that he's going to handle the majority of the work. Whereas week to week, Raheem Mostert, it's possible that he relinquishes touches to Jeff Wilson, right? So Isaiah Pacheco and Raheem Mostert, to me, they're back-to-back this week because of the matchup upside and the scoring potential that's involved in this particular matchup, and the workloads are just so extremely similar. But I do have more trust in Isaiah Pacheco this week because the Dolphins are just a little bit worse. I mean, they're literally back-to-back Kansas City and Miami's defenses at stopping the run this year. They're literally back-to-back. Miami's 1 spot below Kansas City as far as rushing yards allowed, so they're both very similar. Obviously, both on great offenses. Isaiah Pacheco, I just trust him a little bit more because I do think there's a chance that Jeff Wilson could start to relinquish a little bit more touches with Raheem Mostert because Raheem Mostert has really not looked as good in the past couple of weeks. Breece Hall in that matchup against the Chargers here. I've got him above Saquon Barkley at number 6. And the reason why is because obviously you can see on the screen, Saquon's got the volume. Saquon, I've been saying this for weeks, he is the entire New York Giants offense. It's not even close. He's averaging almost 30 opportunities per game. Almost 30. That's outrageous. So there's no question to me that he's a great play week to week because if he doesn't go, the offense doesn't go. They have to make Saquon Barkley do work, and he's a great player. But at the same time, Breece Hall is so capable of hitting a big play. It's unlike most in the league. He's got Austin Eckler level of capability doing that. Christian McCaffrey level, Raheem Mostert level. It's crazy what he can do. Breece Hall is also becoming more and more important on a weekly basis to the Jets offense, and the Chargers defense is not exactly a strong one. So Breece Hall to me has to be inside the top 5 inside this type of week. With all of these matchups, I was right on having him inside my top 5 last week. I feel really good about having him there again. And Saquon Barkley, like I said, with him, he's taken on the Las Vegas Raiders. They're in shambles right now. They're no better off than the Giants are truly this week. And I'm being dead serious when I say that. They've got more offensive talent than the Giants do, but again, Saquon Barkley, we know exactly what's coming for him because he handles all of the volume. Number 7, Tony Pollard this week in Philadelphia. I think this is going to be a situation where Tony Pollard has been disappointing. right? Like, there's no getting around what Tony Pollard's done. And recently, it's not been that good. And last week was a big disappointment. In a big-time win, blowout win versus the Rams, he was not very good. Numbers on the screen don't lie either. He's not been that efficient. Against the Philadelphia Eagles, I think that there's going to be a more competitive game. If you think about it, the Cowboys really haven't played many normal games this year. They've either been involved in blowout wins or blowout losses. That's been their year. So I think this is going to be a close week. I think they're going to put up a really good fight against the Philadelphia Eagles. And likewise for Philadelphia, I think they're going to do the same. I think Tony Pollard gets more involved again this week in this offense in a more competitive matchup because I don't think that Dak Prescott is going to be allowed to throw for 300 plus yards like he did for the Rams. I think they're going to be forced to give more opportunities to Pollard this week. Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor at 8 and 9, and you can see on the screen, their workloads are very similar. So what it ultimately comes down to for me is that Bijan Robinson's backup running back, Tyler Algier, is not as good as Jonathan Taylor's backup running back, Zach Moss. So even though that Tyler Algier has largely gotten similar amounts of work to Bijan Robinson over the past several weeks, Bijan's so much better and more explosive, and he's so capable of hitting a big play. And Atlanta this week, they're taking on the Minnesota Vikings, which is, I mean, they're a much better defense than you think. But Bijan Robinson needs to be here inside the top 10 on a week like this with all the injuries, all the bye weeks, because he does have that big playability. And I've got him one spot above Jonathan Taylor because Jonathan Taylor didn't really see many opportunities last week in the second half. So, like, there's a clear 50-50 split right now with him and Zach Moss. Him and Zach Moss are basically almost just as valuable. And you can see on the screen, like, what his numbers are. They're getting much, much better every single week because he's in a very good offense. They're taking on the Panthers this week. I love the matchup here. So Jonathan Taylor also has to be inside my top 10. DeAndre Swift at number 10 here versus the Cowboys in that matchup. The only real problem I have with DeAndre Swift is that on a week-to-week basis, I don't feel like the Philadelphia Eagles stick to the run. I don't think they do stick to it enough. I mean, last week versus Washington, they honestly abandoned the run, and they've done that in a lot of games this year. So Swift, like, he gets plenty of opportunities per game, and he's super efficient. That's why he remains in the top 10, even against a very tough defense versus Dallas. Number 11, Josh Jacobs versus the Giants. Matchup is great. I don't know what to think of this offense, though. They just fired Josh McDaniels like on Tuesday night. And then they also just made a quarterback change to Aiden O'Connell. Now, with Aiden O'Connell, he did see a lot of targets in those games. And he is getting consistent target share, which is why I like Josh Jacobs, because he's not efficient. You can see the numbers on the screen. It's abysmal. The efficiency rushing is absolutely abysmal. I don't know how much better that gets against the Giants. I'll put my money on him having a good week, though, because of the matchup and because of the importance in this offense, because they frankly can't throw the ball down the field. That's going to leave a lot of check down opportunities for Josh Jacobs now and moving forward. Kenneth Walker at number 12, taking on the Baltimore Ravens. And really, I'll tell you right now, the reason that Kenneth Walker's this low, I've gotten a lot of questions on him this week. The reason he's this low is because of matchup. I don't have concerns about Zach Charbonnet stealing volume. I really don't. It's not going to be a 50-50 split from what I've seen. Listen, Kenneth Walker last week, heading into the weekend, was on the injury report. He missed practice last week in a lot of days. So Kenneth Walker missed a lot of practice time leading up to it. It doesn't surprise me that he didn't handle the workload he's used to handling. But if you look at every other game this year, he's handled anywhere between 15 to 20 plus carries. Kenneth Walker's volume is not a concern for me. The concern here is the matchup. The matchup is tough against Baltimore on the road, where Lamar Jackson is 16-1 versus NFC teams. I think Kenneth Walker will struggle this week, but it's not going to be because of volume, and that's why he's here at number 12, because of the volume. 13 and 14, Derrick Henry, Zach Moss. I'll tell you the reason that I put Derrick Henry above Zach Moss. I would not make too much of me having Zach Moss one spot below Derrick Henry. The reason Derrick Henry is above Zach Moss by one spot is because I actually do think that Derrick Henry will be pretty good against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's getting more efficient as the days go on. As the weeks go on, he's becoming more efficient, and he's actually getting more volume as well. So the first couple games during the season, they couldn't figure it out offensively at all. They were giving more snaps to Tyjae Spears, and it's not that Tyjae Spears is less involved. It's not that he has minuscule amounts of volume now, but Derrick Henry is becoming better, more efficient, and that was a large part last week due to Will Levis. So Will Levis, I think, has a good day, and I actually think it helps out Derrick Henry a lot because Derrick Henry will be more efficient with Will Levis at quarterback. Zach Moss, you could see on the screen, numbers speak for themselves. The guy has been tremendous with every single opportunity he has. That's why I'm okay with you ranking Jonathan Taylor Zach Moss above Derrick Henry. Zach Moss has been tremendous with every opportunity. Now, the weeks go by, and he's splitting at best work with Jonathan Taylor. And again, in a great matchup, that's why he's this high, because the opportunities are still there. There's no question about it. Zach Moss, to me, has been one of the biggest shocks of the year, but I'm going to put him below Derrick Henry here because I know Derrick Henry's going to handle the majority of the volume. Joe Mixon at 15. He's coming back, guys. Joe Mixon last week against the 49ers run defense was excellent, and the reason why is because Joe Burrow is getting healthier. Joe Burrow was under center more times last week than he was in every week combined before last week. Why does that matter? It matters because it gives the Bengals more opportunities to use him in under center and in the shotgun. And the reason he wasn't under center is because he wasn't mobile enough, because he wasn't healthy enough. Now, there's more plays they can run in the playbook, leaving defenses to guess what's going to happen. They're taking on the Bills this week, and honestly, I get it. The matchup on paper is tough, but the way Cincinnati's offense has been running lately, Joe Mixon, to me, is going to continue to be a good option moving forward. I really like him as a high-end running back too this week. And then James Cook, same matchup here. James Cook is clearly a spot behind Joe Mixon, in my opinion, because of the volume. Joe Mixon gets more volume than James Cook. The Bengals stick to the run game. That's the difference. The Bills abandon it. They abandon it quite often as well. I like James Cook. I actually think he's a good player, and you can see the efficiency that he has, both in the run game and receiving. He's averaging 12 yards per reception. The dude's a good player. The problem is that the Bills abandon the run game, and the Bengals actually have a good run defense as well. So James Cook in the scoring opportunity matchup versus the Bengals definitely belongs inside the top 20, but they abandon the run game often, and that does worry me. Jerome Ford, Rachaad White, back-to-back here at 17 and 18. Jerome Ford, I have a lot of questions with this Cleveland backfield. Obviously, Jerome Ford relinquished most of his volume to Kareem Hunt last week, and the reason why is because he was injured. There was no doubt in my mind that he was not 100%. When you watched him play, you could definitely see that the ankle was bothering him, and he wasn't even supposed to play leading into the week. He pushed, and he's tough, and he played, but he missed a lot of practice. So I don't know what the status is. We're filming this obviously before Wednesday injury reports come out and practice reports. So I don't know what the status is this week for them versus the Cardinals, but I can tell you this, I love the matchup. And I also can tell you this, Kareem Hunt had some comments in the media this week about being frustrated with his usage in that loss versus Seattle last week. And Coach Kevin Stefanski was not happy to hear about it. He said he has guys who wants to help the team, and you could take that any way you want, right? Obviously, you could interpret that as him saying, I do want Kareem Hunt, or you could interpret it another way and saying, I don't want to have a distraction here. So I'm curious to see what Jerome Ford's practice schedule is going to look like this week, because to me, if he logs a full practice, I think there's going to be a difference in the amount of volume that he gets versus Kareem Hunt gets this week, and I think Jerome Ford gets back to having the most amount of volume in the backfield. Rachaad White, listen, Rachaad White is just the typical guy who is not efficient with his work. He's in that Alexander Mattison, Brian Robinson, Ramondre Stevenson category of guys who don't get many touches per game and is inefficient. The difference here in why he's above Ramondre Stevenson at 19 is because he gets the targets on a more consistent basis, and his offense is better. The offensive upside is higher. And Tampa Bay this week, taking on the Houston Texans, there's a matchup advantage here in the sense of him being able to get lots of dump-offs here from Baker Mayfield, because I do think that Houston's pass rush will get after Baker Mayfield because the Buccaneers' offensive line is weak. They're weak, and they're also getting injured as well. So I think there's going to be dump-off opportunities here for Rachaad White. And then with Ramondre Stevenson here against the Washington Commanders, the matchup is strong. It actually is a lot stronger because they just traded away 2 of their star defensive players before the trade deadline. So Washington's going to have a new look to their front 7 without a doubt. The problem is New England's offense is so bad against everybody. There's no upside here with a New England Patriot player. There's just not much upside. The only reason he's here is because he does see consistent target share and he does get the goal line work. That's the only reason why. But he shares touches with Zeke in the backfield. Yeah, it's ugly. The matchup is good though. Brian Robinson at 20 here in the same matchup. Again, it's a guy who just doesn't get many opportunities and he's not very efficient. 4 yards a carry is not bad, but Brian Robinson week to week is not, they're not sticking with the run game. Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator over there, he always wants to throw the ball. And Sam Howell's just not that good, and he's also not checking the ball down very much. 2 targets per game for Brian Robinson's not enough. If he wants to save any kind of fantasy value, he either needs to get in the end zone or he needs to get some receiving work. He's not getting one of them. End zone, he got in there a lot early in the year, hasn't seen much of that lately. So I think there's a chance he gets in there this week against the Patriots. I think there's definitely a chance here. But overall, Brian Robinson, my outlook is not favorable most weeks with him. Aaron Jones this week, man, it's just such a shame what's happening. Versus the Los Angeles Rams. I'll tell you what, man, the matchup here is so excellent. I want to have Aaron Jones higher. The matchup is absolutely phenomenal. The problem is the Green Bay Packers offense sucks. And they're not giving much work to Aaron Jones because he's clearly not fully healthy. Those are the 2 ultimate problems here. Offense is not good, and he's just not fully healthy. I still have him here at 21 because he does have the big playability and because of the matchup upside. 22, Gus Edwards this week, taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Gus Edwards was a revelation last week, and I actually played him in a couple of my leagues that I had, Dynasty and Redraft. So I was obviously happy. Gus Edwards had a hat trick. It was awesome to see. And that's, again, it's the same thing every week with Gus Edwards. The only thing that changed with Gus Edwards last week was that he got in the end zone 3 times. That was the only thing that changed. Every week, it's around 12 to 15 opportunities per game. He doesn't get targets out of the backfield because Lamar Jackson doesn't check the ball down. And Gus Edwards at max is going to handle the ball 16 to 17 times. So you can never trust the volume. What you can trust is Baltimore has a really good offense. They've got a really good offensive line, and they're getting you in the end zone. So efficient offense, they're getting you down there. The Seahawks are a tough matchup, though, and Gus Edwards, with the volume that he sees, you just can't ever really count on him being too high on this list. Kareem Hunt at 23. Again, I'm really interested to see what happens with the practice reports. The Browns running backs are very fluid in my rankings right now. They're super, super fluid. I really don't know what to do. And honestly, the rest of these guys in these rankings right now, they're all very, they're not reliable. You can't depend on these guys. So Kareem Hunt, upside play because he's getting in the end zone and he's been really good with his touches. But just from and also the matchup is good, but just from a standpoint of I don't know what's going to happen with Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt this week, I'm wary of this one, and that's why he's down here at 23. Darrell Henderson, Deonta Foreman, Alexander Mattison, 24, 25, 26. Henderson here because the workload is there for him. You can see he's averaging 15 attempts per game. And also with Darrell Henderson, the matchup is good against the Packers. That's really the reasons why. You can't really look to last week against the Cowboys as a barometer for future performance because they got blown out. They're not going to get blown out this week by the Packers. That's going to be a much tougher matchup because the Packers offense is not good either. So the Rams, they may have a quarterback shift this week. You know, we'll see what happens, but I do think that with his stable workload and the matchup, I do think Darrell Henderson should be inside the top 25. Foreman at 25, simply here because I like the upside. If he gets touches, the upside's there. And last week was not a good barometer, but he did handle the majority of the carries out of the backfield. He had 9 carries, Roschon had 6. Now, in a matchup like this against the Saints, I don't think the Saints offense is as good as the Chargers, so it may be a little bit of a closer game, which could give Deonta Foreman more opportunities. But again, these last couple rankings, guys, like, I do not have strong feelings about, because all I'm doing is going based on upside right now. Upside with Foreman's high. That's why he's above Madison. Madison has had no upside this season. There's zilch, zero. With Kirk Cousins. Now without Kirk Cousins and Josh Dobbs in town, there's just no upside here. None. Doesn't see the volume very much and just is not efficient at all. It's just gross. So even in a matchup that Minnesota's taking on this week against the Atlanta Falcons, which is really good, by the way, I don't trust Alexander Mattison. I cannot tell my audience that this is a good matchup here. Chuba Hubbard, Dameon Pierce at 27 and 28. I have Chuba Hubbard above Dameon Pierce this week. The Carolina Panthers are taking on the Colts, which is actually a decent matchup for a running back. And Chuba Hubbard last week dominated in carries. Miles Sanders did nothing last week. Absolutely nothing. So I don't know if you know this, but Chuba Hubbard is probably going to start this game. And Chuba Hubbard has looked better than Miles Sanders, but he's still not very good either. He's not averaging 4 yards per carry, and with the offense's upside and their frequency of finding the end zone, there's not much upside here with Chuba Hubbard. Although he does handle the workload, I do believe, again this week, and he's taking on a good matchup, I can't have him higher than 27. Pierce, I may have been wrong. He's splitting touches with Devin Singletary at this point. Dameon Pierce still did handle the majority of the touches last week, but even if that's the case, like, it's very similar to Madison. It's like he's handling 15 attempts per game, but he's not handling 2 targets per game. Madison's handling 4 targets per game and 13 opportunities and 13 attempts per game. So the volume is basically the same. Efficiency is even worse with Dameon Pierce, though. There's no upside much at all in this Houston Texans running game. Amari DeMercado and Devin Singletary this week at 29 and 30. And DeMercado's got the matchup here where he's taken on the Cleveland Browns. So obviously that's an awful matchup. And the upside really, with this offense with Clayton Tune, I just don't really see much upside here. They're taking on the Cleveland Browns. They've got Clayton Tune at quarterback. They're in a tailspin right now. It's just really not, it's not going to work too much, even if he does get 15 opportunities in this game. You know, volume standpoint, I can understand it, but this week I just don't feel good. And then Devin Singletary rounding it out because he is splitting opportunities with Dameon Pierce at this point, and they are taking on the Buccaneers, who is a tough matchup already. So as you can see, not confident at all about any of the options this week at the running back position. But now we're getting into the underdog running back flex option of the week. And again, I'm not feeling confident about it either, but I've got Royce Freeman of the Los Angeles Rams. He's taking on the Packers. Matchup is good, and he's honestly splitting touches with Darrell Henderson right now. So I do think that when you've got a running back room where we're splitting touches, you've got a good matchup here. I do tend to lean on the side of upside is okay because of the offensive coach. Sean McVay is a good coach. He knows how to run an offense. So I do think there's always going to be upside with a Rams running back because of Sean McVay. And that in combination with the matchup here, that's why Royce Freeman is my underdog running back flex option of the week. So let me know what you think of the running back rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered for Week 9 Fantasy Football. And if you want to see the top 30 wide receiver rankings for Week 9 Fantasy Football, click on this video right here.